All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and get started while you guys have your pizza. Um, so welcome to the UX Design Principles workshop. We each have like our own little sections, so I'm really excited to get into it. If you guys could just sign in using that. Um, if you haven't already, next slide. Yeah, just sign in when you can. So this is what we're basically going to be going over. So we're going to do some intros because I don't know how many people actually knew that SEC has like its own UX design team. So just a little introduction, also importance and impact of UX and UI because it might seem kind of like an abstract, like artistic kind of field, but there is like lots of investment in UX and UI. And that's because it does bring value to a product. So we're going to be talking about that introduction to the actual design, just more so like what actually looks good, what works for properties of UX, brand identity and style guides, how um, industry leaders form their brands. We're going to be doing a demo, talking about style guides. Um, and we're also going to be talking about like certain case studies about how industry leaders apply a style guide. And then accessibility in UX and UI, that's a really big part of the field. So we'll be talking about that too. Current future design trends and the industry. So hopefully this is all really useful information. So yeah, we're just going to be doing some intros. I'm Jose. I'm the lead UX designer this year. I'm a third year doing computer science. Nathan can't join us today. I'll pass it on to
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm also a UX designer for Software Engineering Club, and I'm a first year computer science major as well.
And hi, I'm Alejandro. I'm a second year comp sci major, and yeah, I'm part of the UX team too.
So the importance of UX and UI specifically like to the actual industry. Yeah, so UX is embedded in every interaction that a user has with a platform. Understanding like its most basic principles is really important when you're actually going into those roles and kind of having the goal of adding value to a product, because when you're in those roles, like a company is basically investing in you and they have to see a return on that. So some ways that UX meets a product's goals, just outlined here, reduce need for user support. So companies not going to have to go out of their way to answer each user's complaints if they have bad UX. Brand perception and trust. So if they go back to the website, they go to a new page, it looks exactly like the rest of the website. If it looks different, they might be mistrusting of the platform. So that's really important. Accessibility and market reach. Obviously, accessibility is important. Just intrinsically, we want to have platforms accessible to the most amount of people, regardless of like their ability. And also less noble, but market reach. Increased efficiency in implementation. So like when UX designers make their style guides, design systems, that increases the kind of efficiency of when a developer is going in and implementing all of that for new pages, new parts of their product. So I'm going to pass it off to Colin to talk about introduction to design.
So the difference between UX and UI design. So for UI, it's user interface. So this is basically how the user will interact with a computer system, or how the user and a computer system interact between input devices and software. So basically that's just like interacting with an app and using the buttons and the windows for it. Design components, which are covered buttons, icons, typography, colors, layouts, and any other visual elements users interact with or see in a product. Static mockups or wireframes, style guides, design systems. One of those will be covered later, such as style guides. And UI designers, what they do is create visually consistent and aesthetically pleasing interfaces that are easy to navigate and understand. And then UX. So for user experience, this is basically the overall experience of how the user will feel as they interact with your application or a project. So the overall experience, perceptions, opinions, and behavior of a person using a product under or such as a website or a computer application. This focuses on the user interaction with AI or with UI, and it basically focuses on usability, accessibility, navigation, information architecture, and overall user satisfaction. And both UX and UI work hand in hand with each other to deliver an intuitive and engaging product for the end user. So what UX and UI designers do is they focus on user-centered design. So it's an iterative design process, and the goal of such process is to ensure a high usability for a product. And the phases including specifying audience and context, understanding requirements, design and development of solutions, and product evaluation. So basically, user-centered design, this is where you want to take the perspective of the user themselves when you're developing an application, because those are the end users are the people that are going to be using their application. So you want to take the perspective of what they would be looking for in an application. I'm passing off to Jose.
So we're just gonna get into some basic visual design principles. It can get a little subjective, like for each product, for each designer, but this is just kind of a guideline that lots of designers follow to keep sort of accessibility and the aesthetic of their designs as best as possible. So first, scale. Basically making different elements, different sizes to emphasize exactly what the product wants the user to kind of focus on. Visual hierarchy. So like when you're scrolling a website or an app, what's at the top? What exactly is the product wanting to emphasize? Balance. You don't want everything to be the same size. Something should be smaller and balance out the larger elements. Contrast. This is really important. Like when you're organizing your layout. So this when we design principles talk about contrast, it's not so much like color contrast, it's more so kind of like how to group the elements. So how exactly do you communicate to the user which elements are similar and which are dissimilar? And we'll have examples for that. Gestalt principles, it's kind of interesting how this works. So it's like, how do you put together different elements to create like a collective like visual design? So if you see there the circles, like obviously you visualize like a rectangle, and that's designed by just the cutouts of the circles. So first example of the design principles is scale. So if you see here, Money Heist, the big thing they want to focus on, it's a good show. So obviously like the rest of the content is really small. They have this huge banner at the top. This is a really good example of scale. Next slide. I have an example from our Clubfinity designs, sneak peek. So hierarchy here, the way it's implemented here is that the functionality that is like meant for this tab, so it's the Discover tab. So the search bar and the categories where you can filter like each club are at the top. And then there's a featured section, which is near the top. And then kind of the more specific information that isn't like directly tied to the main use of the tab is towards the bottom. So that's a good example. Another Clubfinity example is for balance. So you see here, we have like this main like hero section, we call it, where it kind of has this like engaging design to showcase the app and kind of get like a main blurb. And it's balanced out by these smaller elements. Also like the positioning is balanced. So these two elements up here aren't centered. Like this column is like off center and these renders are off center also. So it's balanced by this little carousel here. And it kind of just adds structure to the website. It makes it look aesthetically pleasing. And it doesn't look like all over the place. It has like a good sense of balance. So this is what I was talking about with contrast. So you can easily see like which elements are similar and which aren't similar. So if you look at like this element, you're gonna like intuitively guess that this element is gonna be like in the same category or it's gonna be similar to this one. You're not gonna think that this is like directly tied to it. Gestalt principles, this is a fun example. FedEx uses it. They have an arrow there. And we use like the multiple elements, the E and the X and empty space to create this overall design. So I'm going to pass it out to Alan to talk about our brand identity.
So yeah, I'm talking about brand identity and creating a style guide. So first, like, what is brand identity? It's the personality and values that you want your audience to think of when they think of you. So for example, when you think of Apple, you like think of their logo, obviously, but you also think their like cutting edge technology, innovation, and like a sense of elegance. And they communicate that obviously through their products, but also through their minimalist logo and like the font. Duolingo, you think that they'll like keep you consistent. Their brand identity is like really quirky. If you've ever seen like the memes or like them on Twitter, they really go into their like, crazy stalker persona. And you typically want to keep the brand identity and your brand offering consistent. So for example, on the left, like, does that scream fast food place to you? Probably not, because the name is like Chucky's, like the horror movie character, and the logo is a bloody knife. So it's probably a bad way to communicate the brand identity of a restaurant. The other example is Gap. In 2010, they tried to rebrand from their original logo, which is on the left. So they changed it to the middle one. And I mean, if you don't know, Gap is like a clothing brand, and they kind of have also a more elegant vibe. So the middle logo just kind of looks like something you'd see from like an accounting firm or like a software company or something. So there was a lot of backlash when they unveiled this design, and they really quickly went back to their original. So what does that have to do with UI? Well, UI is actually a really important part of building your brand identity. So it might be a little hard to see, but this example on the left is the Notes app. If you have an iPhone, this is what the Notes app looks like, and this is what the Calendar app looks like. So back to the example of Apple, one of the ways they communicate their, I guess like their elegance and their cohesive brand is they have very similar intuitive UIs across all the built-in apps that they have. So as you can see, the fonts are pretty similar. There's a lot of like white space, and the designs are really intuitive. Even though they're two completely different apps, they have a pretty similar vibe, I guess. So how do you make sure that your brand identity and your visual identity is coherent and consistent? This is where a style guide, excuse me, this is where a style guide comes in. A style guide is essentially a set of guidelines and rules for the visuals of your application. It's typically a document that you can refer to when designing new pages or new components or buttons or anything like that. And some of the elements of the style guide is fonts, like the different fonts for like your headers, your body text, the color palette of whatever it is you're designing, the icons, the word cloud. That's the thing in the top right, which is just a bunch of words describing what you want to convey through your brand. And then you can also have layouts and grids. And really, you can include as much as you want or as little as you want, depending on how in depth you want to go with your style guide. That part's really up to you. And in this slide, I included some resources if any of you guys are ever designing the visual part of your app. These are really good resources that I've actually used. Google Fonts is just a bunch of fonts that you can pick from. A lot of design platforms typically have fonts built in anyway, so you don't need it. But if you want to just explore, you can look through that. Color Hunt is really good. They have a bunch of pre-designed color palettes that you can use. And UI Goodies just has exactly what it sounds like. It has like pretty much anything you can think of. They have like font pairings. They have different icons. They have, yeah, pretty much anything you can think of. And again, I think we're going to send these slides out later. So if you want to refer back to this it's there in the Discord. Okay, so now on to our demo. So today we're gonna be creating a style guide and fixing bad UI. So let's create a style guide for a hypothetical organization. Our organization is going to be Kids Learn, which is making an app for young kids to learn addition and subtraction through interactive games. And their brand identity is playful, curious, and vibrant. So first, let's pick out the font. So I don't know. This is what I want to ask you guys. What you think would be a good font choice and font pairing for the app. If you want to explain like why or just shout me out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Does anyone else? Well, that was a pretty good answer. So if anyone else wants to jump in on why they think. Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point too. You don't want to go with anything like too crazy or out there because you might indicate that your app is like for a different target audience than it might be intended. So yeah, good job. That is the one that we're gonna go with today. And next, let's pick our color palette. So same thing. Is there anyone that you think would be best for the app, and why? Or like which one would be bad for the app? You don't have to pick the right one. Maybe just like which one's bad. Well, like for example, the left one would. Oh, did someone? Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Especially like with the primary colors and stuff. Yeah.
Not really stating like, but is there a way that you presented these colors to us like this, where you have like one big block on top with like one color and then the big block and then two smaller blocks on the bottom?
That's a good question, and the answer is no. So I was talking about Color Hunt earlier. I actually got these from the website, and that's how they present it. In an image, it's really cool. They present it in like the image form, and then they have the color codes to the side, so you can literally just copy and paste it. So no, that's just how they decided to do it. Okay, and did anyone else want to? If not, we can move on. So that's our really simple style guide for today. Again, you can go really in depth, but for the sake of time, and just keeping it simple is it. So our style guide. So from here, we're gonna redesign. We're gonna redesign this page, which yeah, looks horrible right now. And I don't know if any of you have seen or used Figma, but this is Figma. This is a really common, popular platform in the UX industry to design. So yeah, again, I just want to open it up. Is there anything that like sticks out that looks really bad, or any suggestions on how to fix it? Too many colors. Okay. Well, so the colors in the middle would be like buttons to play. This is just for the sake of things. So imagine there's buttons and you click on that to start a game. So yeah. On Zoom? Oh. Oh, thank you. Sorry, guys, on Zoom. So yeah, let me just, again, the like stuff in the middle, that's supposed to be like a button that the kids press. So that's just there. Yeah.
The work, let's start, with like top middle, it feels kind of unbalanced and
Mhm.
maybe there's like a wrong scale, like an error like scale going on here.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I'll start, well, really quick. Do you guys notice anything about the font? It's not consistent and it's also like not the fonts that we've picked out. So we should probably change all of the fonts to what we have in our style guide. So I'm gonna go ahead and start there. So yeah, the header area is definitely a big problem in scale and balance. So I would say that the most important thing here is that this is like a page to learn. So in my opinion, and again, it's like all subjective, but I feel like this should be the biggest, bigger than the home at least. So let me change that font too really quick. So we should probably make home smaller. Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's definitely a really good idea. And normally if you have like more time or you want to go in depth with it, that's probably what we would do. For now, we'll just keep it as text since we haven't picked out our icons. So, yeah. That's, yeah, they are actually like the Beatles song, right? Okay, so I'm gonna try and match it to what we have in our style guide. Oh, there you go. Okay. And so Jose was talking about one of the principles of design is contrast. So I want a way to set apart the home at the top with the let's learn. I'm also going to speed it up a little bit because I realize there's a lot more slides. So I actually have a final version that I'm going to switch to and I can explain all the choices. So this is what I just came up with. And again, it's all like subjective. So as you can see in the top, there's contrast now. We're following all the colors in our style guide. The background, we change the color, and the buttons, we change the color. Visual contrast, and everything's just a lot more organized. So yeah, that's the demo. So now let me go back to the slides. Oh. Okay. So how do industry leaders use and follow a style guide? Well, one of the biggest differences, if you did work at a big company like Apple or Facebook or anything like that, is you'll find that there's a lot more structure than if you were designing for a small company like a startup. Because like you can imagine if they have like huge websites and sprawling pages. They want to keep everything really consistent so the user doesn't get lost from page to page and wonder why everything is different. And again, large organizations usually have an actual website with their design principles, and you can actually Google a lot of these. So I'm gonna show you really quick what the Pinterest link is. This is Pinterest design principles. Just if you guys want to explore on your own later. If you go to the link, this is what you find. And let's say I want to find out how to design a button in the Pinterest style so I can put it on a new page. I'll just go to components here and then scroll down to button. And here they have just a bunch of information on how to design it. So they have some, I guess, code here. They have when you should use it and when not to use it, best practices, and just a bunch of examples to really guide you on how to do it correctly. Where did the thing go? I lost the thing. Good. Yeah, so in large companies, there's also a big focus on accessibility because they want to reach a really wide target audience. So you don't want to exclude any group. So you have to keep that in mind when designing. There's a lot of testing to make sure with such big apps that you don't mess up the experience for millions of users. And additionally, you have to keep in mind that you have to adapt to different platforms. So you have to design for iOS, Android, and desktop. So yeah.
So I'm going to talk about accessibility a little bit more. So yeah, how is it defined and why is it actually beneficial to a product? So it's basically a measurement for a user's ability to use the product to the full extent, or to use a product, and also a measure of like how far they can go with the product. And so accessibility enables people with large range of abilities to fully perceive, understand, navigate, interact with, and contribute to the product. So that's a bit about how it's defined. So it holds value for a product through expanding access, of course, legal compliance, because there are like guidelines for accessibility, which I'll talk about more. SEO benefits. So if your website is more accessible, it'll actually improve its SEO. So like, let's say you have like an image of text instead of just like the text in the code. The text in the code is more accessible and it's better for SEO. Improved usability and market reach, of course. Getting the product to as many people as possible is beneficial for the company. Some guidelines and best practices for accessibility is color contrasts, especially for text. Responsive design. So if you use it on different platforms, will work as well on all those different platforms. Readable typography, you have to kind of balance like being artistic and also having readable text, obviously. And also alternate text for images and video. So if you have obviously someone who is differently abled with sight, having that alternate text is good because they'll have like their screen readers. And so that's really useful for them. Also for video, that's really useful. Yes. For accessibility, it definitely has a lot of like applications just because it does change the contrast. So a lot of people would go out of their way to use that. Also, like people with like eye strains and stuff, they would probably select that option. A lot of the time, it's like people want it just like for the look, but it does have application. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the curb cut effect. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar. So curb cuts are like an accessibility design. So they made this like to expand the access to sidewalks, but this actually like improves like the experience for everybody, not just people who are differently abled. So this kind of principle is talked about a lot for lots of different things, but it also applies to UX. So if your website's accessible, it not only improves the experience for people who are vulnerable or differently able, it also improves it for everybody. And this is through contrast. Obviously, if something is low contrast, even for people who have like perfect sight, it's not as readable. Alternate text with closed captioning is also really big. I like when I watch a show, like I have to have the captions on. I don't know, it just makes it better. Intuitive design, accessibility, like kind of improves the intuitiveness of a design. And obviously that is applicable for everybody. And like I talked about SEO. So this is kind of the boring part, but this is like a big like set of guidelines for accessibility. There's like a whole website with each thing. It gets like super specific. So I just laid out like some main points. If you want to go take a look at it, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, the main points are perceivable, making sure that it's that all the content is accessible by different ways, like screen readers, like I mentioned. It's operable, so make sure that any way that a user is going to like interact with the product, like it works. So keyboard, nice touchscreen, that's understandable. Just the language like should make sense and should like explain exactly what it's for. So like if you have a button, it shouldn't just say like click me, it should like say what the button actually does. Robust. So kind of what I talked about with the like having the text be in the code instead of just like in an image. This is important, like oh no, this is for HTML markup. So basically like when you're doing the code, you should like mark which are headers and which is like the body text. This improves accessibility. There are some screen readers that like point out which is the body text, which is the header. So that's also important. And I'll pass it to Colin to talk about some trends.
So with the new technologies coming out every day, how does this apply to UX and UI design? So of course we have computers, we have mobile devices. Nowadays, there's going to be a lot more technologies, just like virtual reality. So for specifically Vision OS or Apple Vision Pro, you gotta account for the different features it offers when designing a mobile application for it. So the features it has includes space, immersion, pass-through, spatial audio, eyes using your eyes and hands, and dynamic scaling. So how does this affect UX design? So one example I'll go over is dynamic scaling. So because users are able to interact very live with the windows they have in front of them, UX designers need to account for the readability of the application, because when using the Apple Vision Pro, you're able to make it further away from you and make it closer to you. And in order for that to work with UX design, you have to account for that, which is like increasing the font size and things of that nature. So how does the role of AI play into UX design also? So a big aspect of UX design is seeing how exactly a user behaves when interacting with an interface. So nowadays, people have to have volunteers and for officers to actually observe users like live in person in order to see how they interact with the app. But with AI, this allows for automated analysis on the user's behavior, which will help designers gain more insight on what the user's preferences and address why certain interactions happen, and be able to improve the user's experiences through that data through design. And then I'm going to go over how much coding is really needed for UX design in particular. So for UX design, you really don't need any coding or very little of coding experience. So for software such as Figma, you're able to use software tools such as prototyping to connect frames of an interface to seamlessly transition with one another. So you're able to actually interact with an app without actually having to write any code at all. So this is an example from our Gator Up app we made during a designathon last weekend. So all the lines you see there are just prototyping. And basically, you're able to have like a presentation of what the app will look like. And each line connects to a button, and that button connects to another frame. So basically, you're able to go through the app without actually having to do any coding at all. And pass it to Jose with talk about the industry.
Yeah, so I'm gonna explain a little more on the industry. This is like more so specific to like how someone who's new to UX or like a beginner would interact with the industry. So yeah, main thing I think is creating a portfolio that shows like not only like your design and your ability, but also shows like how far you want to go with actually pursuing UX. So you can do this with personal projects, projects within organization like Clubfinity, freelancing, and anything else, any kind of design projects you can work on. So when you reach out to those in the field, these are just some tips that you could keep in mind. You need to specify kind of your needs and intentions. So basically, most of these points are kind of like how easy can you make it for the person you're reaching out to? So if you lay out like exactly what you're looking for from them, it makes it a lot easier and straightforward for them. If you prompt them to give you feedback on your designs, that can kind of like break the awkwardness a little because it shows that you do have room to grow and that your designs aren't perfect and you're looking for feedback. So show the desire for growth, like I said. And big point is recognize time. A lot of these people like live and breathe through Google Calendar. So probably don't play with their time. A good thing to do is like when you're asking them to like schedule a meeting, give them like instead of like asking for their availability, which might take a while for them to do, give them like specific times and days and like options that you're free for them to pick from. So how to reach out? LinkedIn is really useful. Alumni from UF is also really useful because you can kind of ask like how they got to the point that they are from the point where you are. A good point that you can talk about with them is kind of asking about their work specifically at like their company or wherever they work at, because it's obviously different like for each organization how UX exactly works, how they interact with developers, if they're completely redesigning an app, if they're building a brand identity, or if they're just like applying the existing brand identity. And like I said, ask about the brand's design principles. This is a good point. So specifically, you could kind of ask about like their design system. So I think actually a good question to ask them would be like at like let's say they work at Spotify or something. Like you could ask them, you know how to do like the Spotify Wrapped? That probably takes like a huge amount of UX design. So we ask them about like specific things that you've seen like their organization work on. That's a really good prompt. Also, a good question might be like asking them like what is completely off limits design wise for the brand's identity. I feel like that's a good question. So just a couple career paths. Obviously, UI designer focus more just like on static designs. UX, which might have a bigger focus on kind of mapping how a user goes through a product. Researcher, that's really a big one, focus on accessibility or user feedback. Product designer, obviously UX kind of ties into that with like how exactly a product is going to be implemented and designed. Design system designer, kind of more specific position. You'll find these like more at bigger companies that need like a huge guideline for how they go about implementing new designs. How to get started. YouTube tutorials are good. Start a Figma project. Apply for the SEC UX team in the fall, or any student org that does UX. and start a portfolio for your designs. Wix actually has good templates like for portfolios, so you don't have to code like a UX. Like if a recruiter is looking at your portfolio for UX, like they're not going to care if you coded it. Like the designs are the main thing. So they're good templates. And that is pretty much it. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Yes. I'm not sure if I've seen any open source ones like for contributing. I know there's like ones that companies like don't keep internal to the company. So like we looked at the Pinterest one, which is like their full design system, like it goes so into detail. But like for open source contributions, I'm not sure. I feel like that would probably not be something that a company wants to do just because like a design system is like specifying exactly like specific things that they need for their specific brand. But you could start like a simple style guide for like a project you're working on, kind of like we looked at. Obviously the one we did in the demo was like super simple, but you could get really detailed with it, like make your own components and stuff. So yeah, good question. Any other questions? Yes. For SEC, I'll have Max talk more about that, our president.
I can, I guess, elaborate on that. So, what we do is usually at the start of this, each semester, before it was like only in the fall, and now we're doing it like every semester. We actually like send out a form, which you can fill out. You can like tell us, like upload your resume, tell us about your experience. And most of the time we're hiring developers, but often we also hire for UX, and that's right now for our app Clubfinity, which they showed a little bit of. So if you want to, work on like a mobile app, you can actually apply for that. And we also have like positions for UX designers. So if you want kind of like experience in creating a project like that, definitely check it out. So it's I mean, like it's a pretty chill process for actually just applying. It's just we'll send out a form at the start of each semester. You can like fill it out with your info, and then we'll get into contact with you, reach out, speak, and yeah, if you're a good fit, we'll place you on the team.
I would say definitely if you're interested, apply. It's a really cool and fun experience. It's not like super intensive, but it does kind of feel like you're part of like a startup in some way because like there's multiple development teams, obviously development and UX interact. So I think it's a really good way to gain experience. So if you're interested, definitely apply in the fall. Any other questions? If not, thank you guys for joining. And if you didn't sign in earlier, please make sure to sign in. Thank you guys.